an order here. So once again, good morning and greetings to all of you. Thank you for being here. It's my distinct honor and pleasure to be moderating this panel. We have with us 5 panelists, and I will take 1 minute to introduce them properly, hopefully. First of all, His Excellency, Mr. A.H.M. Mustafa Kamal, Ministry of Planning, Bangladesh, who's on my extreme right. We have His Excellency Dato. No, I was going to introduce him first. Sorry about that. I will get to you. His Excellency Dato Siri, Dr. Hajiwan Junaidi bin Tanuku Jafar. I hope I pronounced your name right.
Almost right.
Almost right. Okay, well, get 50% marks for that. Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Malaysia. Then I have Her Excellency Ms. Veena Bhatnagar next to him. And I have, of course, His Excellency Dr. San Nguyen, Deputy Minister in the President of Myanmar's office. And I also have His Excellency, Vice Minister of Justice of Vietnam, Khan Inh Nguyen. Is that right? Nguyen? Almost. Very bad marks again. So I'm now going to introduce them in more detail, but I wanted just to have people get to know the names. His Excellency, Deputy Minister of Home Affairs from Malaysia, I'll take his name in a short form, Wan Junaidi. Right. Holds a doctorate in business administration from Southern California University. His degree is from the Council of Legal Education, London, and a law degree from University of Buckingham. He has been a member of Parliament of Malaysia since 1990 and was appointed Deputy Minister of Home Affairs after the general election 2013. He is also a prolific writer, having published several books and articles in local and international magazines on parliamentary practices in Malaysia and Commonwealth countries. Second, to my left, is Her Excellency Ms. Veena Bhatnagar, Assistant Minister for Health and Medical Services of Fiji. Thank you for being here a long way. Ms. Bhatnagar has lengthy experience in radio, television broadcasting as TV host and programs director for Radio Fiji, and I think she should have been moderating this session. Seated on my far right is His Excellency Mr. Khan. Is that all I can live with or no? Okay, Ngoc. Okay, Khan Ngoc. Vice Minister of Justice of Vietnam. He graduated with a master's degree in international trade law from the University of Arizona and a bachelor's degree in law from Cuban State University, Russia. I didn't know there was a Cuban university in Russia. He has a long-standing career at the Ministry of Justice in Vietnam, including leading the departments of international cooperation and international law. What a combination. Sitting to my right, I'm very pleased to again introduce our Deputy Minister in the President of Myanmar's office, who I met recently at the ASEAN Summit. He holds a PhD in Business Administration. For 28 years, he worked as a lecturer, professor, and rector at the Yangon Institute of Economics before he joined Ministry of Education as Deputy Minister in 2013. In early 2014, he took the position of Deputy Minister at the Ministry of National Planning and Economic Development. In November this year, He moved to the Ministry of President's Office as Deputy Minister to provide support and guidance for social sector development issues. Seating second on my right, far right, you all know him by now. He's our chair also for the ministerial segment, His Excellency, Mr. Mustafa Kamal, Minister of Planning of Bangladesh. Mr. Kamal graduated with a master's degree in accounting from Dhaka University and a bachelor's degree in commerce from the same university. He was elected as a member of parliament 3 times and held the post of chairman of Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance. Now, how do you get elected 3 times? We need to get his advice on. President of International Cricket Council. Now, Australia and I can clap hands on that. Pakistan and India, of course. How could I have forgotten? Nepal is also here. They're also coming up. Yes, and Nepal is coming up. So, okay, with this introduction, let me set the scene, and then the way we will proceed is ask the questions from the panelists. First of all, I think we've talked a lot about civil registration this morning. Just very quickly to reinforce the point that it is a right of an individual and it is the responsibility of state to deliver this right to the individual, is the first point I'd like to make. Second is that it's not just about one set of information, it's multiple variables and multiple indicators that we need. And we need to get the denominators right so that we effectively are able to look at the ratios and we have appropriate regional disaggregation, not only just the national information, but state or provincial level, depending on the country's geography, as well as what we do need is at the city level, municipalities, rural level information that we need of the civil registration. We have talked somewhat about the virtues of these indicators, but I'm going to not repeat everything. Suffice to say that we are very encouraged as advocates for CRVS to see that it does feature in post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda, an agenda whose proposals have been submitted by the Open Working Group of the General Assembly. And it was also prior to that highlighted in the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's high-level panel of eminent persons on post-2015 development agenda in 2013. And that report in particular used the following words, and I quote from that report: "Leave no one behind," as the first of the 5 transformative shifts for the new universal agenda. So by virtue of that, we leave no behind in terms of the universality of the message here. CRVS is very much at the core of this agenda, and we do know that where you don't have good functioning civil registration system, you end up excluding a large segment of the population and communities, and undocumented persons does not give enough information to the politicians, to the policymakers, academics, to analyze the matter effectively or to allow citizens to exercise their full rights. Without legal protection or access to social, economic, and cultural rights, you can't really function as a complete citizen. There are also a number of civic duties we as citizens of countries have, such as voting powers, paying our taxes, which may be painful, but has to be done to enjoy the social privileges, and it cannot be done without national identity. The high-level panel goes further to propose a goal which reinforces this leave no behind message, that is, and I quote from the report, ensure good governance and effective institutions. The report calls for transformative shift to build peace and effective, open and accountable institution for all. I think this all sounds familiar when we talked about CRVS system to be backed by good governance and accountable, properly functioning institution. The panel, of course, calls for, as well as the open working group, has identified several goals and indicators, and a bunch of these really are the core elements of what appear as vital statistics. So let me get to the open working group proposals of the General Assembly, which are published proposals. If you haven't looked at them, it's available on our website as well as of the United Nations. And General Assembly has published these. There are about 17 goals and 169 targets, and I would not remember the number of indicators offhand. The key thing that I wanted to highlight was that there is one proposed target which is crucial for us to remember, which is by 2030, it calls for providing legal identity for all, including birth registration. Under this goal 16, under the goal 16 further, they are aiming at promoting peaceful and inclusive societies, providing access to justice, and the building of effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions. So the point I'm trying to bring out is that sustainable development kind of reinforces the CRVS in multiple ways, and it's a question of just going through the goals, the lists of goals, to appreciate how this dynamics has been captured so effectively by the member states. Vital statistics will be even more crucial for the measurement of the prospective sustainable development goals, which require higher levels of disaggregation that I talked about, including, of course, detailed cause of death information for tracking progress towards mortality targets. So vital statistics can be obtained from various sources, but the preferred source are the administrative data from civil registration records, so that the sample is not very biased. Only universal and well-functioning civil registration systems can provide detailed information over regular annual intervals and with universal coverage. So I think I've talked a lot about the agenda appearing in the Sustainable Development Goals, and as the momentum builds up on the Sustainable Development Goals and its implementation, we should be able to implicitly and explicitly get more progress on CRVS system. I did want to, as a last remark, but not, of course, undermining the significance of it, that the recently published report called A World That Counts by the United Nations Secretary-General's Independent Expert Advisory Group on Data Revolution for Sustainable Development, which called for action to mobilize the data revolution through developing a global consensus on principles and standards, sharing technology and innovations for the common good, mobilizing new resources for capacity development, leading for coordination and mobilization, and exploiting some quick wins for sustainable development data. There's a lot underlying the major highlights that I have provided. Suffice to say that our message is to, one, underscore the significance of the CRVS, but also to highlight for benefit of all of you that Sustainable Development Goals are a set of very rich goals, and they reinforce CRVS in multiple ways, not only by targeting the targets and goals, but also through messages on governance and institutional building. So with this, what I would call a scene setter opening, I would get to the task I have been assigned, which is to make sure we have a very stimulating panel discussion today. It's important to start off by the first question that I would like to pose. I do need my glasses for the sequencing, sorry. Sorry about that. So I will ask the first question to all the panelists and give them 3 to 4 minutes to answer the question, because we have a set of questions and I'd like to hear all the panelists on few sets of questions. So I have already mentioned to you about the Secretary General's high-level panel on post-2015 development agenda, which considers legal identity as an imperative to development. This panel basically highlighted that one of the basic institutional responsibility is providing legal identity, and it further highlights that every year about 50 million births are not registered anywhere, so these children do not have a legal identity. So as a result, these children are condemned to anonymity and often marginalized because they don't have identity to be able to access certain services. As a result, the panel has recommended that states should adopt a goal to provide free and universal legal identity on a range of variables, and that it constitutes an important element of good governance. So the question to all of you for answering one by one is, what, in your opinion, we should do? Is this issue that I have talked about adequately reflected in our post-2015 development agenda draft? And I'm hoping that you have looked at that, but I have sufficiently provided background on it to facilitate discussion. So our first call will be to Mustafa Kamal, Minister of Planning, Bangladesh. Remember, all of you have 3 to 4 minutes to respond to this question.
Thank you very much. In fact, we are here to touch the hearts and minds of everybody living under the planet. Now, our Secretary General, the current Secretary General, he has a slogan, to leave no one behind. Earlier to him, our ex-Secretary General, Mr. Kofi Annan, I still remember, he also made one statement like that. His remark was like that: no development without security, and no security without development. So it goes hand in hand, and we also today understand why we are here. Because you see, under the planet, the humanity will have to serve them. And it is the responsibility for all of us who are here, the iconic personalities, who are holding different positions and in their own capacities, coming from different countries, we'll have to take care of our people so that we can give them economic emancipation. If we leave them behind, our planning process will remain incomplete, country will not be developed, and no way leaving anybody behind, if it is not inclusive, that development is not sustained. For a sustainable development, we'll have to work hard and we'll have to take care of that particular problem. Now, today's question, whether the post-15 agenda, how accurately it has been drawn, this is the question. So here, what I would like to say, Our Secretary General, he had set up a high-level committee comprising iconic personalities who are having brilliant minds under the leadership of Indonesian President. And I think they have done a good job. So right at the moment, we can hold on to that and we can work to achieve the desired results, what has been given in front of us. But side by side, what I strongly believe, you see, every country has its own specific sort of things. So it cannot be generalized. MDG goals, MDG goal 8 was a specific agenda. It was tailor-made and it was templated. We knew the goal and we had a time frame and we tried to deliver accordingly. In this case, we see it is something, somewhere, I think it is loosely attended because it has to be made country specific. If it is not made country specific, in that case it will be very hard for some countries to achieve the goals. They have physical constraints, they have other physical limiting factors. So my suggestion would be that United Nations, who are the prime mover of this particular event and who are in the driving seat, they should see each and every country's their requirement, and United Nations should come forward by giving some sort of financial support or consulting services so that they can adapt to the requirement and they can come forward and they can deliver. So this is my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, so I move to the next panelist with the same question. Let me call on Deputy Minister, Presidential Office, Myanmar. The question, as you recall, is one for the post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda. You can talk.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. In fact, I came here to learn. And so my response will be quick, short, and simple. As we all know, CRVS, Civil Registration and Vital Statistics, provides people with a legal identity. Legal identity is a documentary evidence. It is a proof for us to access essential services such as education, health, care, and so on. In addition, we can also use it as a proof to enjoy certain rights, such as political participation. So I believe that because of legal identity, we people can enjoy at least basic human rights. Here, it's regrettable to learn that every year, about 50 million births are not registered. They do not have legal identity. So we can say at least they lose their basic human right. So yeah, I'd like to say that I agree with the recommendation that says to establish the goal to provide free and universal legal identity.
So in other words, you are comfortable with how the post-2015 proposal is
yes.
shaped up. Okay, let's go to Dato and ask his perspective on what his read of the Sustainable Development Goals is. Are we doing justice through that goal, or do we need to do something additional in the Sustainable Development Goals? Over to you. The agenda we are looking at is post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. When I read the objective of the development goal way back, I was thinking to myself, we in Malaysia have done the planning much earlier. It started 1970s when we introduced what we call the new economic policy, which was wrongly perceived to be a discriminatory policy in Malaysia. But in fact, it was not. The policy was supposed to be to restructuring the society in Malaysia. Restructuring the society in Malaysia involved 2 or 3 levels of restructuring. One is the restructuring between racial groups so that there should not be any imbalance between what we call the have and the have not, and the have and the have less. I think a little bit mouthful to say that. And the other aspect is between the urban and the rural in terms of development, health, wealth, social, education, and every aspect of human life and convenience. And after some years, that was introduced 70, and then the new economic policy ended in 1990. It was replaced by what we call the National Development Goal. It so happened that during the time, the urban migration, the rural migration to the urban area, create the imbalance which in the urban setting itself. Then we have the urban poor, and this also need addressing. As a result of that, all this planning, and not only that, we are looking also into the male and female, men and women, balance in terms of development. And this also being later being declared by the United Nations to include the agenda for women. But we have done that long before the United Nations make it an agenda for the whole world globally. But we in Malaysia have done that much earlier. But then again, when we put in meritocracy in the development of all those, and then we found that the competition made by men made the women less able to come forward. So therefore, this is where the registration, what we call here the, not that I'm very familiar with this term, this is my first time, you must forgive me, I made some slip here and there. Civil registration of vital statistic. When my officers came and see me about 3 weeks ago about the vital statistic, I said, I knew vital statistic when I was young. That is statistic 2436. But I didn't know that vital statistic is about the registration of people. That is involving the registration of birth, death, cause of death, marriage, adoption, and divorce. Your Excellency, may I say that in Malaysia, this has been set up in the later part of the 19th centuries. The regulation, the laws that we made. Let me explain a little bit about Malaysia. It's a unique country, my country, unique. This is the only country that has got 3 components. May I have your indulgence to say the Peninsular Malaysia or the Peninsular Malaysia, Sarawak, and Sabah. It has a very different set of arrangement and different set of social development and every aspect of it. Sarawak in Borneo also is Sabah. The stage of development in the 2 countries is much less than the experience in the Peninsular Malaysia. So as a result of that, the vital statistic become very, very important to assess the people's achievement in the government program to develop the restructuring of the society within Malaysia. And of course, I will not go into detail on this aspect. We have the law made in the 1800 and in Peninsula, 18 something around that time in the Strait Settlement, that's before the independence, and also in the Federated Malay State, in unfederated Malay State in the Peninsula. And then we have in Sarawak in the 1900 and also in Sabah, because Sarawak was administered privately by a gentleman by the name of James Brooke, whom we declare the White Raja in Sarawak. No other country in the world that has got a White Raja. Then we have Sabah under the administration of India Company. And these has got three sets of law, and they all administered after independence by the National Registration of Malaysia that streamlined the whole registration in respect of all the things that we mentioned in our pamphlet here about the date, registration, birth certificate. And it is compulsory now to register your child upon birth, and it's made compulsory by the law. And then if in the state of Sabah, late registration within 40 days, it's called late registration. The process is a little bit different than the normal registration within the 42 days. Then we created, I think the National Registration created, they call it mobile unit, to go access into the interior area so that they can get access to the people in the rural, far rural area, far beyond the reaches of the administration, in order to achieve the level which we have achieved now, 95% of registration per birth in Malaysia.
Okay, Mr. Minister, in interest of time, I would like to sum up the message that I'm hearing and tell me if it's right, that it doesn't suffice to simply have an aggregated picture, which is what the post-2015 seems to imply, but I thought we are talking about legal identity for all, which then includes the disaggregated information by sex, as well as disaggregated by rural areas. So the question I had was post-2015 goal, whether we need to talk about its enhancement. And from what I understand from you, that it's important that we highlight the disaggregated information. Is that the right inference that I get from you for the post-2015 development agenda?
Interestingly, my profession is a lawyer. When the lawyer says brief, you always talk very long. So unfortunately, I didn't have...
Okay. Okay.
So I was about to go into that. Actually, it is
short
compulsory
answer, please, because I have to pick up
yes,
on
of course, the compulsory registration to create the personal identity of anybody born. The law of Malaysia says anybody born in Malaysia, irrespective whether he's Malaysian or anybody else, born in Malaysia must be registered with the national registration, must be given the certificate of identity to show that he was born in Malaysia, so that he can bring this document back to his own country or her own country that the child was born in Malaysia. And that document can also show which nationality he belonged to, what the date of his birth, where he was born, under whose doctor he was being looked into. And then that everything include here. Also in all these things, everything is being included. It's so inclusive. The document is so complete that you didn't have to ask any further for registration. This is made compulsory by our law and by our constitution.
Very good.
Yes.
Now let me turn to Weena Malik and ask her the same question. I think we have heard a few of the panelists, but what's your perspective on this post-2015 agenda? Is it really zeroing in on the issue, or does it require enhancement? Over to you, Weena.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Your Excellencies, special delegations, a very good morning to you all. The question is, in my opinion, is this issue adequately reflected in the post-2015 development agenda draft? Well, to answer that question, my response would be no. It is not being adequately reflected. Okay. But then there are a number of emerging global issues competing for the same space and all wanting to be adequately reflected. These issues have been discussed in various global forums, and prioritizing them will be a challenging endeavor. Therefore, we need to accelerate our efforts. If universal legal identity, such as birth registration, is to get the attention it deserves as discussed in this forum. We have heard it is an integral component of CRVS. To realize the objective of CRVS, getting everyone in the picture, we need a standalone goal that supports it. Putting this under a broader goal, such as good governance and effective institutions, can reduce its significance and vitality in contributing to other goals, including MDGs. The UN has already recognized the importance of this through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and through the Convention of Rights of the Child, among other international agreements. The UN therefore needs to place significant importance on the cost of neglecting CRVS and elevate it to a position that will draw the attention of governance actors at the global, regional and national levels. The cost of neglecting CRVS has been well documented. I don't need to expand on this because it has been extensively covered over the last 3 days. This forum has also heard how this neglect has affected global issues, including the MDGs. The UN, therefore, needs to enhance its efforts to attenuate the impact of neglecting CRVS because it is cross-cutting by clustering free and universal legal identity with similar goals under an overarching goal. When considering the post-2015 development agenda, it may wish to consider CRVS or another theme that specifically addresses this cost of neglect.
Good. So I think we have a dissension here that this is not an adequate goal, and I think you brought out very nicely the fact that it has cross-cutting dimensions, so the complexity of capturing it effectively. Let me turn to our panelist, Vice Minister of Justice, with the same question, because we are trying to collect opinions from all the panelists on this specific question, which is very key to the future of the CVRS.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recent research and reports and surveys tend to indicate that the situation is very serious and we need to take the actions. Therefore, it is very appropriate and necessary for us to include in the development agenda post-2015 the issue related to CRVS, as we have discussed, that is very important for human beings and for good governance. Therefore, I think the current draft of the post-2015 development agenda somehow has reflected the direction and the intention of the international communities. What I wish to add is that there should be more specific language to spell out specific action to be taken at different levels, at UN levels, regional levels, national levels, at specific point in time toward the final goals. Otherwise, we will wait until the very final year to do the work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have a spectrum of views out here on our first question. We will come back to this, but let me now go for the second round of question and ask another question. As you recall, in my statement also, I mentioned that for all of us to collectively develop CRVS, it's scaling up as the report of the World Bank and WHO points out, requires an ambitious investment plan, which, if we are talking about the period of 2013 to 2024, will definitely require more about billions of dollars. But per year, it would require about 199 million. I was just wondering, from your specific country perspectives, what are you doing in terms of lining up financing, but also adding to that, what can the region do, how to think innovatively to raise financing to meet the gap, because some countries clearly do not have the resources to attend to this. So with this question, let me now start with you first, Dato. If you can elaborate on it. I know that Malaysia is part of the ASEAN also. If there has been a discussion on that, or if at a country level you have some experience on that, we'd like to hear from you on the financing gap. Financing the financing gap.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like I said earlier, I think there's a continuity of what I said earlier. When Malaysia decided to implement the policy of restructuring the society, we are talking about the enhancements of everything. That includes the giving of the people legal entity through registration. By doing that, and all assistance that the Malaysian government give to the needy or the people who need help will be able to be channeled properly and systematically. As a result of that, I think since the 1960s, 1970, when the new economic policy was implemented, we had 70% of our people live below poverty level. By today, we have only 1.7% live below that level, even though the level of poverty has now raised several times over in view of the development of the economic development in the country. So what we are looking at is here is the financing in respect of this kind of activities was channeled through various means. One is to the national registration through the Ministry of Home Affairs, and the other is through the Ministry of Women Affairs, and also the Social Development Ministry and the Rural Development Ministry. With this kind of financing, I don't see much problem in my country when it comes to enhancement, the registration, and to what I call carry out the requirement of a development goal that being spelled out by the United Nations. The only thing is the pace at which we can implement, because what I have been saying all this while is when the rich, when the poor running and given the platform to run, and the rich also running, so to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor will continue to happen because the rich can run faster, even though with the government assistance behind it. So therefore the gap will continue. But in spite of that, you can see actually the bottom line is we have already achieved the level of zero poverty level in the country. And that instrument, how we make it, is through the registration of the people to identify the target group and to implement the assistance to the people who need assistance through various means, through entrepreneurship, through education, through health, and through employment. With that kind of activities, certainly the financing is definitely needed. But of course, every country has its own limitation when it comes to financing, because not all countries has got that kind of ability, because there are large number of poverty, like I said in Malaysia before, in 1970, 70%. Can you imagine the population of 15 million then? Of course, Malaysia is small compared to Bangladesh, compared to India, and compared to many other third world countries in terms of population. So we have the manageable number of now 30 million, and we have 1.7% of living below poverty level. Now what the government doing is now to beeline the target group, the 1.7% must be enhanced in many aspects. One, education; third, health; 3 on all other social aspects. Because once you leave behind these people in terms of economy, you will leave them behind in terms of social, in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of everything. So all these things must be looked into so that money must be provided for. We allocated billion of Malaysian ringgit toward this end in order to create or achieve the what been spelled out by United Nations under the development goal. Certainly, CRVS help us because it can identify individual person and family through this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was very good. That my take home on this one is, listening to you, is that one, of course, Malaysia has better resource potential, and given the size of its population, and given the approach you have to merge the allocations from different ministries together, it's manageable within at a state level to finance these activities. With this, I think now it would be useful if we got some more regional perspectives. So, Madam Bhatnagar, it would be very good to hear from you if you have some suggestions for, say, the low-income, least developed countries who may not have adequate funding, and also in context of the large population sizes, if there are some suggestions you have on how one can kind of mobilize regional financing action for this. But by all means, if you want to talk about within the context of your country or at a country level, I would very much welcome your perspectives on the financing, gap financing.
That's question number 1.
This is the second question. Sorry?
You want me to answer that question 1?
No, question 2 that I was mentioning, and the question 2 is more specifically is, what are your ideas? How can we mobilize 199 million per year to meet the requirements for fixing the CRVS systems? That's more specific. You have the...
Thank you. Again, my response to this question will be specific to Fiji's experience. The interventions that we have heard during this meeting confirm our review of relevant literatures that a well-functioning CRVS system decreases the cost of managing public health. We have been presenting this case to our government and also to our development partners with a view of increasing resource allocation. In the short term, we realize that more investment is needed, thus cost will increase. However, we are quite aware that the benefits to be derived from this is in the long term will easily outweigh the cost, as stated in the Pacific Vital Statistics Action Plan. In the long term, investing in CRVS reduces costs and efficiencies by lessening dependence on very costly surveys and consensus. And because it is routinely collected, CRVS provides more timely data, supporting more efficient and effective service provision. And this should incentivize the strong support needed from our government and, of course, other development partners.
Okay, good. I think that is very helpful to have because in addition to the resource potential internally at country level, it's important to have development partners' contribution going forward. I think we have discussed the financing issue a bit from the country perspective. If any panelist has more perspective on what regional endeavors could be launched to mobilize collective action for funding, it would be very helpful. So I'm just opening the floor to the panelists. Anybody has idea, and then we could put this question aside and move on to other questions.
Okay.
Mr. Kamal.
Okay, thank you. You see, first of all, from Bangladesh perspective, I would like to tell this August Budi that because you have a vision. By 2021, we shall be graduating ourselves from a least developed country to a middle income country. And then we have other visions also in hand. By the year 2030, we will make the country hunger-free. And by 2021, we have a lot many targets. The vital targets are everybody will be educated. Our per capita income will be 2,100, and the country will be fully digitalized. We will be a paperless country. So, in order to achieve these things, and in order to make our country hunger-free, so the parameters what you are keeping in front of us, we will have to meet those parameters. Now, we know, as you are aware, we're not that rich compared to Malaysia or China or other countries. But even then, for our own requirement, from our own perspective, we will have to reach those targets, and we shall be definitely attaining those things. But now, I have a suggestion. My suggestion is this. As a chartered accountant, I've looked into the details of the papers, working papers, what have been forwarded to me. I've seen the way MDG was templated, objective-based, very, very specific, but this CRBS is not done like that. I'm sorry to say like that. As if it is loosely drawn up. What is vital statistics? None of us are aware of that. The vital statistics, it is a subjective term. What is very vital to me is not vital to other developed country. In my country, vaccination for a child is a must. So it is a vital statistics. It is coming under the head vital statistics. But for other country, for a developed country, say Malaysia, maybe it will not come like that. So first of all, what we mean by the term vital statistics, that has to be identified. That has to be more specific. That has to be well defined. And then, right at the moment I see, in every country's United Nations is working under their different entities in a different way, in an isolated way. But all are related to, I find most of the cases are related to CRVS. Now, if these things could be coordinated effectively, and if there is a coordinated approach, I don't think funding will be that much physical constraint for any country. But another point is there. Another point is definitely there. Our development partners, they promise sometime, but they don't keep it up. So here, I can give you an example. You know how vulnerable Bangladesh is when it is viewed from the point of view of climate change impact. We are actually, so it is very, very vulnerable. I'm not going into details. It's very, very vulnerable. And then our development partners promised us every year they'll be coming up with so much amount of money, so much. But we are not getting anything. So that way, sometimes we receive promises, but these are not being taken care of. But here, I would request United Nations and ESCAP, particularly, as they are the prime movers, they will have to take care of these problems. They will have to pursue their best so that any development partners, for any specific event, once they commit, they must keep it up. Otherwise, our entire exercise is getting frustrated. This is not a good example, or this way we cannot expect any results within a time frame or within a timeline. So my request to you again would be, I think time has come. You kindly see if there is any possibility of revisiting the definition of vital statistics. Make it more specific, make it objective-based, and in that case, if you give us a time frame to fulfill these objectives, like your MDG goals, I think we will be successful. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your perspective, and let me now turn to another panelist who has an opinion on this question. So over to you, our delegate from Vietnam.
Thank you. I just look at the issue from another perspective, given the fact that resources, whether human or financial, always limited. Why don't we take the approach, cost saving from the national perspective, that is how to save money. The experience in Vietnam tend to show that we try to cut administrative procedures, simplify administrative procedures, cut costs, cut the paperwork, and that would very much reduce the cost for the government, for the people to comply with the law. And we need to speed up the work to be performed. In Vietnam now, most of the civil registration work must be completed within the same working day of receipts. And also there are lessons to learn from others to save money, to avoid failures in the wrongful investments. Thank you.
Very good answer and a short one, that cost savings are one way to be able to finance these in an efficient manner. Let me turn to the third question, which is somewhat related to what Mr. Kamal was mentioning. Obviously, vital statistics has pretty broad contours, and adding more variables in it could have cost implications too. But my question is not now on the cost, because if you actually look at the post-2015 agenda, it says primarily it talks about the birth registration, to be more precise, in the clause of the goal itself. Now, this doesn't mean that the goal was only restricted to birth registration, but birth being such a vital event, and the first one, I think the architects of the open working group must have zeroed in on birth registration. I just wanted to get your perspective on how do you see this evolving, and this comes back to the first question in some senses also, that is it adequate just to do that, or should we highlight other vital statistics in a more effective manner? So with that, maybe I'll start with you, because you also mentioned this point.
Thank you. In fact, you see, civil registration, and we are attaching so much importance to a particular component, that is birth, registration of births. It is a must, because if for any of us our birth is not registered, in that case we don't have any existence. Of course I have existence, but I don't have my birth registration. At the time it was not applicable. And my secretary, my ambassador is also here. None of us are having birth registration because it was not applicable at that time. Now we understand the implications, and it is a must. Because now without birth registration, we economic planners can't move forward. We can't think of economic planning and moving forward any country, whether it is a least developed country or an emerging country or a developed ones. Everybody needs that. That is the basic input for us. If we don't measure the input effectively, we can't manage the inputs as well. So we'll have to measure it first before we go for management. This is very much interwoven. Now, my idea here again I am saying, you see, we are attaching importance to births and deaths. But I think time has come. We should think the life cycle of a person. You are attaching importance here. You must also attach importance in other areas. You are attaching importance in a man's life, man or woman. In his or her life, there are other areas, very vital areas. His or her education and his character, his unique economic well-being, his profession, whether he's a chartered accountant, whether he's a lawyer, a diplomat, or a politician, and then anybody, any of us, whether our character is good, we do the good things for the society, or we are dangerous for the society, we are religious fundamentalists. These sort of things, I think, also should come up. I know if we put all these things together, in that case it will not be cost effective. And in that case it will be very much difficult to deliver. But I think slowly and gradually, seeing and thinking each and every component of a man's life cycle, you can come up. But there is no denying to this fact, it has to be cost effective. So cost also has to be considered. In order to make it cost effective, in that case it has to be simplified, very simple, and I think slowly and gradually, phase-wise, we can include other major areas of a man's lifetime. So this is my request to this august body and to you, Chairman, to everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we are now going to ask a set of diversified questions. You are most welcome to add your perspective to the question of the exclusion of elements from the goal, but I'll just float a set of other questions to bring depth to this discussion. So, Deputy Minister of Home Affairs from Malaysia, question is, how are CRVS systems linked with, and how can they contribute to of institutions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Malaysians have, right from the very beginning, agreed that the CRV contribute to good governance, because there are a lot of things that link up together. If you want to apply for passport, you must have your identity, and your identity must be verified by the national registration. If you want to apply for help on education incentive given to all the students in the school in Malaysia, want to get that 14 from the government, you said properly, you are Malaysian, you are entitled to agencies, like the agencies that, whether you are already outside or inside, people or the target group for the assistance to be given by the government. So my future lies, because we development in 2020, that we call it the Vision 2020. We have another years more to achieve this, meaning in every aspect of development, all the national registration data information must be linked up with all our agencies with respect to assist every individual in the country. And that is one aspect. The other aspect is Malaysians have attracted 6 million coming to our country. The marriage to the local, they give birth, and this registration must be enhanced, must be made to identify their nationality, legal entity, their existence, and their from which country they come from, and it determines everything. But even though it may not give them automatically, give them the legal entity, and that is for the reason why this must be achieved by 2020. Our Malaysian target of registration, either it is every vital thing that happens, the birth, then the marriage, and then the death, all those are to be included in the registration. Identity, my card. This my card is very important. If I can incorporate even toll payment through this. I can even go to use this as a credit card. So a lot of can be incorporated inside what are the data that I have inside here. And that is why in the year to introduce the data protection, that this thing should not be used by outside there, because we knew that being transacted by the fraudulent means outside there by not protecting this data, which in the year 2000, this document linked up with passport office, with the wealth be given. It is all these people link up with the health ministry so that what kind of treatment all over the country. It got to be achieved by 2020. Thank you.
Okay. Looking at, I would recommend very much answers now. And I'm going to ask a diversified set of questions to each of the panelists. So next question to Ms. Patnagar, given her background in health and medical services. How can well-functioning CRVS systems assist in improving public health and reduce mortality, which are the central parts of the current and future global development agenda? So your thoughts in like 1 minute. But I'm looking at the time and I know we have a press conference.
Once again, it's Fiji's experience 2 years. While we have been improving on our CRVS system, major challenges which we are progressively addressing, they still beat us. Actually, our accomplishment that so far has only confirmed global observations and trends that successful public health interventions are only as good as a country's CRVS system. Actually, we have seen improvements to CRVS has resulted in the following: successful public health interventions anchored on evidence-based and targeted interventions as a result of the burden of disease generated from interventions based health policy formulation, improved public health planning. Aspect of mortality, we have been able to do quite a lot. Actually, mothers taking more responsibility for their child in terms of early bookings and improve nutritional issues, avoiding complications during pregnancy, improve service delivery issues such as shortage of equipment and drugs, and reduce postnatal complications for mothers that can be avoided. So quite a lot has been done. Yeah.
I think the gist of it is that CRVS system is a very useful mechanism to be able to target public service and effect in the context of Fiji in particular. We are covering all the aspects in an effective. So Vice Minister of Justice, Vietnam, what are typical weaknesses of national legal frameworks that underpin CRVS systems? Again, a short answer. You have been already very good in giving short answers.
Thank you. I will be short. If I may, I would like to suggest there are 3 main weaknesses in the national legal system regarding the CRVS. First, the failure to put the people in the policy of the law being adopted. Second, that is the inconsistency, conflict with laws. One law go one dance. Thirdly, implementation systems. So 3 main national legal system.
Thank you. You lived up to my expectations on. Let me ask the last Deputy Minister, President of Myanmar, how will CRVS systems assist you in planning public service? Leave no one behind.
Thank you. Yeah, we all know that governments are responsible for services, education, and so on. So governments will have to take behind. In order to leaving someone behind, as need timely and accurate people's whereabouts, population, density, and the services they need. And if the government get, they can provide right services at the right place to the right time. So CRVS can assist government in providing government services with the aim not leaving no one behind by providing right information.
Thank you. Let me now turn to the floor. I think in interest of time, I will probably take maximum, and the short, because we do have time management issue here, given the fact that we have the press conference coming after this, is what I have heard. So, any questions? I'm sure there are some questions, and I do have time for 3 questions, short ones. No one has a question? Very satisfied group of people. So happy, Mr. Chima, Deputy.
谢谢主席女士。
You need to give us 1 second.
谢谢主席女士。这个就是民事登记和核心信息统计啊，它很多。这个是这种可能会经常会产生很多问题。那么从政策协调到具体实施，各位嘉宾，你们在你们国家是怎么实施的？这方面的经验，各个部门的这个互动起来，形成协同的努力。谢谢。
One more, if Bangladesh, Your Excellency, Ambassador.
Chair, I just, you did ask the question, CRVS as a development agenda, and we heard mixed views. I think the majority view is that it was not reflected. And in fact, we see that it's just one of the targets, 49 targets. High persons of the Secretary General on it quite seriously, though. We see in the SDGs one of the, I think, under 16, where it says, so my question was that how, now that the post-2015 negotiations will start from here to there, because it is inadequately reflected. This should be, the CRVS system should be the foundation of development data for the post-2015 regime. And in fact, it has worked very well with MDGs. But we are disappointed to see how inadequately it is reflected or not taken very seriously in the within the open-ended working group. I think they've put it very notionally. So I think my question is, how do we take it from here to there? What role would you and ESCAP play in it? Thank you.
Okay. Any last-minute observations? That was a good question, a good perspective as well as a question.
I would endorse what my colleague from said. We also find that the plans of many development agencies are not really adequately reflecting the urgency to commit financial assistance to the agenda of CRVS. I know there are complaints from the different countries, but this should also remain as the focus of development agencies for the next decade, since we are committing here that we will achieve a certain vision by 2024, and therefore the continued commitment to this in spite of other competing claims, I think that should also be ensured. Thank you.
Okay. Any last-minute thoughts before we conclude the session? None. Okay, so I was hoping the questions will be to the panelists, but the questions are to me. So thank you for making my task difficult towards the end, but it would also be wrapped up in by way of conclusion. I think the first observation was CRVS involves multiple agencies, so how do we go about it? I clearly am not the expert on CRVS, but having dealt with development agenda in multiple countries, I always find when we are dealing with cross-cutting, and somebody did mention this point, that the ideal solution for cross-cutting subjects, and this cuts across several ministries because the civil registration system or administrative system may not have the right skills to measure and to kind of understand the nuances of the variable itself, that the best response to this is to make sure you you have a focal point, a focal administrator, achieve coordination, and the political leaders to be very committed to it. So my short answer would be that first thing is that the cabinets of the countries this as a very big, since it cuts across implementation processes, and planning is of course of planning or economic developments that may exist in countries. Is the responsibility of industries. So I would say that this first should be raised at the cabinet level, have the political leaderships to be in command and understanding the significance of it, and perhaps set up a committee that cuts across the various sectors, and then in the CVRS establishment be with the specialized group of knowledge base can feed into the CVRS system. Now, I have made the story based on development coordination. If this is the best way to do, if there are other experts that add more value to this during the course of the deliberation, I very much recommend that discuss this first observation, but it's very critical, and this doesn't apply to this subject of CVRS. It's the same issue. There are 100 ministries involved in it, and how do you coordinate? Have a commission of women that has been an answer sometimes, and yet it has not satisfied in some countries. So, you know, there's some mixed results on that. I think our distinguished ambassador from Bangladesh had a very provocative intervention where she said it is not adequately reflected in, and how do we move forward? I'm hoping that you will have enough time to deliberate on the outcome document, and it's better that the member states give more guidance to us rather than our saying ESCAP will do it this way or that way, because that would not be a very democratic way of moving forward. It would be very good if this is deliberated on the floor, but I also have to draw your attention to that there is a lot of debate even within the General Assembly during the casting of these goals, and it was an endeavor. It's taken 1.5 years and we have yet to have very on these goals. The problem is that everything about development becomes so critical, and if you try to have too many goals, then it becomes unmanageable. Now, during negotiation, countries operate more intensively on this particular, and your permanent representative will be critical in negotiating a more proactive role depending on your position on. But I think one has to look at it in two ways. One is that there are reinforcing goals in addition to CRS. We have a health goal, we have an education goal, governance and good institution goal, and perhaps one should talk about the fact that the CVRS, the vital statistics goal, should be reinforced, and there should be more interlinkages developed by the national governments to reinforce the point of good governance institution. So narrative is one forward with this. The other is, of course, the goals are to caters. Now, there are already 169, and there is an attempt to consolidate those. But, you know, that's another way that we amplify the goal of vital statistics through the indicator. It's not in my head as to whether goal or not, but our colleagues will look into this quickly and give you some. So the second question, from advice from the Indian delegation, rightly so, was that we back this real substantive. And when 99 million, how do you mobilize? So that we have 36 countries classified as countries with special needs. So I think it would be very useful, given the fact that we do have some multilateral development banks and some private and private action-oriented entities here, along with the UN system, the UNICEF's. ESCAP, of course, is a very poor organization. Implement programs. You know, there should be a discussion around it, and it would be very path-breaking if the government had an agreement where multilateral development banks and financiers agreed to have a regional facility that country needs particularly could draw to take to deepen their CV system. So that kind of, in some senses, to people who raised the question from the floor, but that's those were the crucial pointers also from the panelists, and I would like to thank very much my panelists and people who spoke from the floor to add to this deliberation, and I'd like to have a hand of applause for my entrance fee. For to enter into the room. So in that case, you can augment your. So thank you for being here. I'll ask the MC to coordinate further.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to panelists and delegates for such an illuminating and engaging discussion. It is now my pleasure to invite you to a lunch hosted by organising partners for the Ministerial Conference. This will be served in the hall on the ground floor of the conference centre, just in front of the main entrance. May I ask that you please return to the conference room, ready to begin deliberations of the agenda, policy priorities for improving CRVS in Asia and the Pacific at 2 o'clock. Finally, could I quickly mention that a black portable hard drive identified by a Karen Carter sticker on it has been lost, and if any delegates do find that hard drive, please could they hand it in at the Secretariat desk. Thank you, and do enjoy your lunch.